Hi, I'm Lone Candle. It is the comment that started the whole Trump campaign and exploded him to the heights of winning the Republican primary. It is also emblematic of how Donald Trump repeatedly gets things wrong, then almost childishly refuses to admit it or to clarify.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
If we take his statement as intentional, meaning it wasn't a gaffe and he doesn't need to clarify, I'll deal with that later, then the statement is both wrong on the facts and is unnecessarily offensive. First of all, he talks about Mexico sending us people. Immigration across the southern border is not a project run by the Mexican government. It doesn't send us people. People from many countries decide to come here on their own, and many of them come illegally across the Mexican border. So there is no one choosing to send us their worst or their best. It's just people who come. Now, it isn't really clear what Trump says next, but it sounds like he's saying that immigrants, or maybe just illegal immigrants, coming across the Mexican border are rapists. He then says some of them are good people. He assumes. The "I assume" implies he's not even sure about that. The implication of this is that most, or a large minority of, Latinos illegally crossing the border are rapists. This is untrue and incredibly insulting. The insulting part should need no explanation. Calling a bunch of people rapists who are not rapists is a mighty dickful move. It is flatly untrue that a large minority or a majority of these immigrants are rapists, or even dangerous criminals. We could probably end this discussion here and say, yes, it was a ridiculous statement. But if he just meant that illegal immigrants are dangerous at a higher rate than citizens, then he could argue that this immigration is causing the U.S. as a whole to be a more dangerous society. But even here, there is not clear evidence that immigrants are more likely to be criminals than citizens are. He likes to find examples of an illegal immigrant who did commit a violent crime, and then he puts the victim's family members on camera. But this doesn't show that the immigrant population is more violent than the non-immigrants. We could also parade citizen rapists around, but that wouldn't show that U.S. citizens are especially prone to rape. To determine this, we need more careful study. There is no perfect study to determine this, but if Trump is going to make such an insulting claim, then the burden of evidence is on him. A sociologist did a 2007 study finding that incarceration rates are actually lower for immigrants. Economists Butcher and Peel used census data to show a lower incarceration rate for immigrants, and that this lower rate could not be explained by deportation. However, a huge problem with this census data is that the Census Bureau had to guess whether or not a prisoner was a citizen because there wasn't good data on that. Studies on New Jersey and California immigrants also found lower incarceration rates for foreign-born people. Now, a high percentage of federal prisons do consist of immigrants, but many of these are there for immigration violations, so that doesn't say much. Also, these percentages just refer to federal prisons, which only make up about 9% of U.S. prison population. The people in the state prisons likely won't match the people in the federal prisons. Studies have looked at some state prisons and also found a high percentage of foreign-born inmates, but these were not representative either. Another factor we have to consider is the bias of the justice system. Even if we could determine for sure that the foreign-born are more likely to be in prison due to violent crime, this could be the result of an unfortunate bias. Also, lots of people stay in prison for a long time, so looking at the population today doesn't really tell us what crime is going on now, or even over the last decade, because many prisoners may have been in prison longer than that. On balance, the evidence might lean toward immigrants having a higher crime rate than non-immigrants. However, there really isn't enough clear evidence to say that confidently, and making major policy on such weak evidence would be incredibly foolish. So would saying shit out loud when running for president. But okay, let's pretend like the evidence clearly leans towards immigrants committing crimes at a higher rate. And let's pretend that can't be due to racial bias. Then let's forget that Trump did not make a narrow point, but just broadly called immigrants rapists, or at least illegal immigrants. If we give Trump all the benefits of the doubts and lean his way on the possible problems with the claim, we might be tempted to say Trump has a point. If immigrants do tend to be more violent than citizens, then we should have less of them. Therefore, let's stop them from coming or drastically reduce their number. But this also makes no sense. Not every U.S. state has crime rates equal to each other. So should the peaceful states now ban immigration from the violent states? No! Because it doesn't make sense to ban all people because their group has a higher crime rate. Most people from every state are good people, not just some of them. And the same is true for immigrants, legal and illegal. Thus, it is fear-mongering and possibly bigoted for a presidential candidate to spread this idea that Mexico is sending us their bad people, their rapists. Most immigrants just want a better life. Immigrants from other states and other countries. Let's not insult them by calling them rapists. Let's not fear them because in their number, like in all populations, there are some bad people. And let's not do that even if a little higher percent of them are violent. But maybe this was all pointless. Maybe it was just a gaffe. I hate when people jump all over anyone before they understand what someone meant. I usually take people at their word when they want to clarify a previous statement. So let's see how Trump does that when asked about it by a reporter.
Do you regret saying that specifically about rapists, or do you stand by it?
No, not at all. Of course, it's not only Mexico. If you let that run a little bit longer, it talks about people coming from all over. They're coming from all over. They'll soon be coming, and probably already have, be coming from all over the world. You're probably going to have people, you're probably going to have terrorists coming from the Middle East. Somebody said, oh, we don't have terrorists. They don't even know because they don't know who's coming. So we have this open border. It's a sieve. It's like water pouring through. People are coming in by the hundreds of thousands. We have no idea who's coming in. And it's not just Mexicans, and I have a great relationship with Mexico and with Mexicans. I have an absolutely great relationship. But we're not just talking about Mexico. Now, Mexico is very smart. You know, Mexico makes it impossible. It's one of the hardest nations in the world to become a citizen of, okay? But people run through Mexico. They go through our border like nothing. They end up, we don't know who these people are. But all you have to do is you should do a show from the border. Talk to the border security. You will see the kind of people coming. You'll see the kind of crime that's being committed. And we're taking these people. And by the way, just to finish on that, it's common sense. They don't want these people, so they send them to the United States because the United States is run by stupid people. We have stupid leadership. We have incompetent leadership that doesn't know what it's doing, so we take them. And certainly we do have killers and plenty of other problems coming over. We take them because other countries don't want them. We're like a dumping ground. The United States, Aaron, is like a dumping ground for the world's problems. So absolutely I wouldn't change that.
So you absolutely wouldn't change it, and specifically when you said they're rapists, and some I assume are good people, but you don't have any regrets about that word rapists.
And some are good, and some are rapists, and some are killers, and we don't even know what we're getting. And they're not just coming from Mexico, they're coming from all over. So certainly you know that's true, and from a common sense standpoint you know that's true.
He doesn't really clarify the statement. He doesn't apologize for sounding like he's saying most immigrants are rapists. If I say something that reasonably sounds like I'm insulting a bunch of people that I didn't mean to insult, I clarify. I say, I didn't mean to say that. Here's what I meant. I'll certainly admit to regretting the wording. This is not what Trump does here. He just goes on saying similar things, even when directly given the chance to be overtly clear. It sounds like he doesn't even realize what his remarks sounded like he thought they were perfectly clear and accurate. They weren't. What's wrong with this guy? He could have made plenty of legitimate points about the real problem we have controlling the southern border. But instead, he spreads a false and demeaning message. Well, I guess he wouldn't have gotten all this attention and won the nomination if he didn't. Maybe it was a strategy. I don't think so. Trump seems to truly be oblivious to how stupid the stuff he says is. And he may be president soon. Well, I'm Lone Candle. Like me, comment me, love me.